Well, hello and welcome to PM Woodworking. My name is Paul. I've been doing woodworking for about 50 years. And today I just want to share one of the projects that I've made in the past. I designed this one probably about 45, 50 years ago. We had a neighbor back where we lived who restored Model A's and Model T's. And I was always interested in that. And that's where I got the inspiration to do this car. So with that, we're going to make a couple changes on this. We had the axle body. I used to do it in a solid piece and drove the axle all the way through. I'm going to change it this time, and I'm going to do a change in the axle holder. So you actually see the axle exposed in the center. I was looking at some older pictures of the Model A's and Model T's, and it seemed as if that was exposed. Also, I may bump this bumper out a little because it looked like it stood off a little, and the lights are going to be set a little higher. Now, I designed this car not really knowing what it was. I was probably 10 or 12 years old when I drew it up and scaled it down. I used to sell a bunch of these. My dad would take them to work, and he would sell them. He'd put them on his desk, and I'd be really busy with the things that he would take to work and I would sell. Now, I was visiting my uncle down in Florida, my Uncle Bob, and on his shelf, he had a gift that I had given him probably 45, 50 years ago. And he still had it sitting on his shelf. It was one of the original Model A's that I had made up. And he still had it and still displayed it. I was pretty excited to see it when we were down there. And I had told him, hey, I'm going to share that in my video, that this car really did exist that long ago and that you've had it. So I'm going to dedicate this episode to my Uncle Bob. And let's get started. We are going to be using some 5/4 pine. It's ripped down, I believe it's 4 inches with a tapered back. The bottom of the frame, we're going to use 1/2-inch pine. I think it's like 1/2 by 6. And then we glue up for the engine compartment. Pretty simple build. And also the wheels are made from 3/4-inch pine. And they all work. And it still rolls. This was a car that I had put away in a box. And we were actually taking down our Christmas ornaments at Christmas time and found this old box and found this old car. And I was like, you know what? I got to make this one again. So let's get started. I hope you enjoy. To all those Model A and Model T people, I did do some research on them now because I never knew there was a difference back in the day. I just liked the car and I just scaled it down. So there we go. Let's get started. Okay. So we're ready for the first part of the build. I have our pieces cut to the length that I need for the total material. So we have the body at 3 3/4, the axles at 3-inch, and the bottom frame at 5 1/4. So we'll get ready and start ripping the material. Remember to use your push stick. Let's get going. All right, we'll lower the blade down for now, the 3/4-inch stock. Just remember, just keep the blade just a little above the workpiece. I tell you that all the time, just in case your hand gets pulled into it. If the blade's only sticking up a little bit, you hopefully keep your fingers, just bleed a lot. But let's be safe. This next rip is at 3-inch. And now our next rip is at 5 1/4 for the body. Okay, so we got all the rips for our material. So the next step that we have to do is take our 5 1/4 frame pieces that are 3/4 thick, and I have to surface them down to a 1/2 inch. Step of surfacing down the frame body from the 3/4 down to a 1/2 inch. I have these surfaces set. I take a little less than a 1/16 per pass. So this is going to take, 4 passes to get it down to where we want. Okay, so well, let's get started. We'll adjust it down another 1/16. Lock it in place. Okay, this should be the last pass to make it a 1/2 inch. Okay, that should be our 1/2 inch mark. So as you saw, this table is a self-feed table, so it pulls the material through. You don't have to push it, and you just grab it and start all over again, and you adjust it with the dial coming down. It's got a gauge on the side. You can't see it, but it's right here, and power switch. The next step is to cut all the pieces to length. We'll start with the body. So we're going to need a piece that's 6 3/4, actually 2 of those, another one that's 1 3/4, and another one that's 3 7/8. That'll take care of all the body parts, and let's get them going. Okay, so that takes care of our body parts for the top. So we'll finish sanding and drilling some holes in those in a moment. The next is the frame body, which we need that to be 9 3/4 of an inch. 9 3/4. So that's the lower frame. So the next is we have to cut the axle holders to 1 1/4 inch, and we'll need 4 pieces that long. So what I'll do is I'll just put a little mark on the fence, and they'll all be the same. Okay, so that's all of our axle holders. So we have pretty much all of our parts cut. Next step is we will move on to the body and start drilling holes for the posts. Okay, now we're going to drill the holes in the top and the middle piece to accept the posts. They're a 1/2 inch dowel. We generally set them in about 3/8 to a 1/2 inch on the middle piece and the top piece. Now I had made a jig, very simple to make up. It's a 90 degree. Okay, and then I measure in a 1/2 inch and a 1/2 inch on each point. So when you drive your drill bit in, it hits that point at the same spot all the time. You can turn this piece however you want. It's always going to hit. So when the pieces are being assembled, everything will line up. Okay, let's get going. Okay, so that's all done. So now you see we have matching holes. So when you go and do your posts, everything matches up. So now we'll cut the engine compartment. We're going to make that into 2-inch rips. Okay, and the next step is ripping the bumpers down. So we got to rip these 3/4 of an inch, 1/2 by 3/4. We'll lower the blade. All right, so that's all our pieces that we need to be cut for the build of the Model A. We'll cut these to length, and then we'll start gluing up some body parts. So now we'll cut the engine compartment, which those pieces need to measure 3 inches. 3 inches for the engine compartment. We'll lay that out there, and we'll just put a little mark on the fence just to cut the same piece. Pieces for the engine compartment, so those will get glued together, and then we'll round the edges for that. And then we have the bumper. We need to cut those at 5 1/4 inches. And also we'll just put a line there to just duplicate that cut. Okay, so those are the 2 pieces for our bumper. Now we have all our pieces all cut. Okay, we are going to start to glue up some of the body parts. This way, while that's drying, we can do some other things. So our 2 pieces, we're going to glue up. And I like rubbing them together. Just wipe off some of the excess. So I'm going to put it in the vise. So what I do is I put a piece on the bottom. So when you drop these pieces in there, they hit a flat piece. And I have some pieces that I put on the side. So if there's any kind of mars in the pieces on the vise, you don't need any scratches or anything. All right, so that's good. There we go. There's the first piece. Okay, so now we are going to drill the holes for the axle holders. Drilling a 3/8 hole. I have them already pre-marked. They're a 3-inch piece, so 1.5 inches on center, and on center 3/8 of an inch. So, little trick that I've learned over the years: you take your first piece and you butt another piece to it, and you kind of hold it in your hand, and you pull the piece into the other 90 degrees, so this drill mark stays straight through. Okay, so we got all our axle holders drilled. So we're ready to start the wheels. We're using a 2.5-inch hole saw. Just a quick thing, we're going to drive the hole saw almost all the way down, just so the tip of the drill bit comes through the other side, so we can flip it over and we don't get any chatter on the back side. Also, a little thing I wanted to share with you is always keep the longer piece to your left. This way, when the drill is spinning, if it bites, it's going to crack into the arm, the post of the drill press. Whereas if it was on the other side, it would come and crack you in the ribs. So just a little thing I wanted to share with you about a drill press. All right, let's get going. All right, so we're all set. Got all our wheels cut. I always make a couple extra just in case something goes wrong with one. Say they get a flat. No, I'm just kidding. All right, guys, let's move on. All right, so we're all set for the next step of the wheel. And what it is, it's just a detail line that's kind of going to separate the rim from the tire. And all we're going to use is this 1.5-inch hole saw. It'll follow the same hole as the 2.5-inch hole that we used to make the wheel. All right, let's get started. Okay, so that is what it looks like. A simple little detail. Let's make a couple more. Okay, so those are the 4 wheels. The next step we will have is going to the belt sander and just cleaning up these edges, sanding them down, and then we'll be able to route the edges with like a 1/4-inch rounding over bit. All right, so we're going to start sanding down the wheels. We're just going to run it on the edge of the belt. And you want to remember to constantly spin it so you don't wind up with a flat spot in the wheel. Okay, let's get started. All right, so that's a quick process. So now all the wheels are sanded and ready to be routed out. I'm going to use my router, and we are going to use a 1/4 round rounding over bit. And I have the router turned upside down, and I just turn the wheel into it. I feel comfortable doing it. I've been doing it that way for a very long time. Are there other ways to do it that you may feel more comfortable with? A router table? I recommend doing that until you get used to your tools and know how they're going to react. Don't do anything until you feel comfortable doing things. So router table may be better for you, but this is the process that I use. All right, let's get going. So the routering process is over. Our wheels are complete. Now, always remember, when you're using any power tool, always stay focused on what you're doing. Don't get distracted looking around. That's when accidents happen. All right? So let's get going to the next step of routering out the axles. So on this, you're only doing one of the bottom edges. The top you leave flat because that mounts to the undercarriage of the frame, so you want that to sit flat against that. All right, so let's get going. Okay, so that's the process of just rounding over that one edge all the way around. All right. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we are going to stand the end grain on a couple of these pieces, and then on the bottom piece with the post, we do have to round that back edge of the car. And then we will sand the engine compartment, get all the glue off of it, and then lightly sand the frame. All right, let's get going. Okay, so we've sanded off all the ends, got all the glue off all the parts. We rounded the back of the Model A. That would be where the seats would go. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to glue some parts together. And put them in the vise and tighten them up and let them sit overnight. Okay, so we're ready for gluing. So we'll start with the top, and we will put a little glue on the two pieces, and I will put 2 nails inside, and we'll set the posts, glue those, and nail that and clamp it in place. All right, let's get started. Just kind of squish it around a little. And set the nail gun up to drive 2 nails in to hold it in place. Alrighty. Let's just wipe some of that glue away. And we'll let that set for a second. Okay. So the glue has set overnight. We had that clamped. We're ready to put on the bottom piece. And we'll glue that and we'll let that set overnight, and we'll be able to sand and finish this thing up tomorrow. All right, let's get some glue on there. All right, and then we'll just set it back in the vise and let it set up. I like to squish that around a little and just set it back in the vise. And I just have a second piece in here to match up so it clamps evenly on the pressure. All right, there we have it. We're all set till tomorrow when this all dries up and sets, and then we'll start rounding out and smoothing out the edges. Okay, so we're ready to unclamp the body of the Model A. It's been drying overnight. So now we will sand the edges to take out any imperfection in the blocks as they were glued up. Also, we are going to create this bevel in the back, which is a 1/4 inch, which starts right at the body line and goes back on a slight angle. Just adds a little detail to the body of the Model A instead of having it straight. I just think it looks a little nicer. Okay, let's get started sanding. I'm going to put on a little dust mask, try to help a little. All righty, and let's get going. All right, so there's the first bevel. Now what I like to do is I take the edge of the belt and line it up with the edge of the cab, and I try not to move from there so I keep my angle and I don't exceed the sanding area beyond the cab. All right, let's get the other side done. Okay, so now we got the bevels cut. So now, being that we were going against the grain on that cut, we now have to straighten it out and get all the cuts of the grain out of that. All right, so you see the bevel tapered back. They're all sanded. All the sanding lines are all going in the same direction now, not across the grain. Okay. Next step is to round over the front edge, and then we can taper down. We're going to round it and then taper down the canopy part of the Model A to a nice smooth line. Okay, so now we're ready to round over this top edge of the roof of the Model A. We're going to use a 1/2 inch rounding over bit. And while we're at it, we're going to do the engine compartment also just the top edge with the 1/2 inch rounding over bit, just like that, rounding over, and also just rounding over that top. So we have that rounded over to match the engine compartment. Now on this rounding over bit on the top, I do that as a start point, and then I taper this back just a little. So it kind of comes, so it's not so thick the whole distance. If you take a look at this one, it starts maybe back here, the taper, and then rounds over. We'll go back to the sander and take care of that. Alrighty, so that's what it is. Starts somewhere around the center of the cab and tapers back. Okay, so let's get started. And what we're going to do now is cut the frame out for the axles to sit a little deeper. So basically what this is creating is a running board within the cab. All right, so just like this. Just a running board, and it notches out for the wheels so they kind of sit within the car and not extending past. All right, let's get started. So what we'll do is we'll use the axles that are already cut just for our mark of 3 inches. We'll go around in 3, 3, 3, and 3 inches. So the next step is I have my square set for 3 inches, for 3/4 of an inch. So we will just mark those lines. And after that, we will get our jigsaw and just cut those marks out. All right, so if you can see it, those are our marks, and that's what we're going to cut with the jigsaw. Okay, so we got our jigsaw all set, and we will just cut out these little notches now. All right, so we're all cut out. We'll sand that down and smooth out some of the edges. All right, so now we'll just sand the edges down a little smoother, take off the sharpness on the corners, and that piece will be completed. So you also want to just hit these little corners to round them a little so they aren't so sharp if something bangs into them. Now I'm just using 120 grit sandpaper here just to ease the edges up. All right, you don't want to do the front edge and you don't want to do the back edge. You want to leave those nice and square so that when the body sits on it, it still looks nice and flat. All right, so always look over your piece and make sure you got all the edges and they all look good. Next, we will mount the axles to the frame. We'll just use some glue and some 18 gauge nails. Okay, so now we will secure the axles to the bottom of the frame. We're going to glue them and then we're going to shoot them down with the 18 gauge 1-inch nail. Let's get started. So I'm using the Type-On Quick and Thick glue. Seems to work good. Sets quick, dries quick. Get them right to the edges. And then we'll just put 2 nails in it and we'll put them towards the outside edges so not to interfere with the axles. And you want to make sure you keep them even to this outside edge. And even to the front edge. All right, so we'll shoot them on. All right, so the axles are now on. I think that'll look nicer. All right, so we have the frame all assembled, glue is dried. Next step will be to install the body on top of the frame. But first, I like to get into this piece and just sand down and ease all the edges, take all the sharpness out of it. And just a simple process. Like I said, I got that 120 grit, and I'm just going to run it on the edges. What happens if you don't round the edges off? That the first time something bangs into it, it kind of crushes it and then it looks terrible. So it's just a simple process. Just take your time. See, you just kind of just ease them. Just take that sharpness off the corner and it makes the piece look so much nicer. It softens the piece a little. You can hit these back corners right in here. You can round them in a little. You don't want to go too much. Just to make that a nice smooth corner. There's no science to doing this. It's, you know, you'll get a feel for it and you're like, well, that feels much better than that sharp edge. And you'll see it. It's that little touch right at the end that makes everything all come together. I mean, if you left it sharp, just I don't like the way that looks. Just makes the piece look, here. Look at the difference in the round edge and that sharp edge. Okay? That's why you want to do it. Just soften it up a little. Just remember, however you round one corner, you want to do that to the other. All right? You'll see it. You'll see it. But do not do the bottom edges. You want to keep those nice and sharp. All right? You don't want to rush through this. Take your time. This is where it all comes together. All the time that you've spent building it. Now you add your touch on how you feel it should be. So you want to pull it through each corner, your left corner, and drive it down on the right. This way you kind of round that front edge. All right. Now you can use a palm sander or something to do this. I just feel that when you start using all those tools on something like this, you kind of take away from the enjoyment of actually, feeling the piece and adding your little touch to it. All right, that looks good. Nice and smooth. Got all the imperfections out, got all the corners and edges all completed. And let's get gluing. Alrighty. Now you want to set that at your points where you need it. Make sure your gapping on the angle that we tapered it back is even. Just move it back and forth a little. And then you want to set the engine compartment. This way, if there is a slight adjustment to be made, you can still do it. All right. And you want to just move that around a little, get that nice and even. So my engine compartment is, oh, that fits good. So the body, need to line up those points, even with the frame front corners. Make sure your edges are good in this back corner and that your spacing is also good on everything. So the engine compartment should sit 3/4 on both sides, which it does. All right, we'll let that sit there for a few moments and then we'll go on the underside and put some nails in it for extra strength. Just make sure everything is looking good. All right, that looks great. And being that all the pieces are all nice and flat and everything, I'm not too concerned about the clamping at this point because everything is fit nice. Okay, so we let the glue set a bit. So I'm just going to turn it upside down and I'm just going to drive 2 nails inside this. And then I will drive 2 in for the engine compartment. I'll get a little wood filler and just fill these little holes so you don't see them. All right, so now we're on to the bumpers. Just a piece of 1/2-inch stock. Just going to run it on the router just to ease the edges, or actually round the edges, with a 1/2-inch quarter round bit. So when everything's all set, we'll apply the bumpers to the front and the back of the car. I was talking about offsetting the bumpers. I actually think it looks nicer this way with the bumpers just ahead of the wheels. So I'm going to leave it like that. Okay, so we got the bumpers all cut, sanded. Now we are just going to install them. And the next thing is I'll glue them down, and we'll just shoot 2 nails into the face of them and fill them with some wood filler. And just squish it around a little. So the spacing for the edge of the bumpers is 3/4 of an inch, which I have a piece laid out. So 3/4 on that side and 3/4 on that side. So we're just going to keep that even with the frame part just sitting underneath the engine compartment. So what's nice about this is that it is covering a lot of seam lines. So looking at it from the front, it looks much better and cleaner. Make sure it's even across the body, and we'll put 1 nail in it on each side. So now we'll just flip it over, and let's get a spacer. There we go, same thickness as the bumper. So we will glue this in and once again nail it down. And once again, just 2 quick nails. And there we have it. That looks sweet. First, we have to put on the headlamps. So what I have are 2 little spacers. I'll put 1 on each side, and then we will glue the headlamps right in. I'm going to set them back just a smidgen, maybe 1/8 of an inch off the face of the engine compartment, just like that. This way there, both are the same height. And then once the glue dries, we'll remove those little spacers. Let's glue those on. So you just want to put a straight line of glue. Tuck that in right there. Leave it 1/8 of an inch behind. Roll it around. Put a thin little layer of glue on this. Now I'm not going to nail these. I'm just going to rely on the glue. So we'll let this all set. And we'll come back in a little while, remove the pieces. Okay, well, getting close to the end of our project of the Model A. All our parts have dried. Glues have all set. So I was pretty excited about the design changes. You know, after 50 years, you don't really want to change things, but after doing the research and everything, I did see some changes in the bodies that I thought would benefit the way this car would look. So I extended the engine compartment 1/2 inch, and I extended this back half 1/2 inch also. And then I extended the bumpers over the tires instead of behind just the body of the truck, the body of the Model A. And I think it came out much nicer. You know, you kind of get stuck in a rut thinking, oh, that's it. And then once you sit back and you realize, hey, I could make this better. It's a good feeling after all this time thinking, hey, that's the only way to do it. Or that's the way it just has to be because that's the way I started making it. So very happy for the changes. So if you're ever building a project and someone has a plan, and don't be afraid to change it, make some personal touches to your project. Make it yours. I mean, you might see this and say, hey, I could even do better than that. I hope you can, and I hope you'll try to. It's a good feeling, you know, just sitting in your shop, tinkering around, and being creative. I'm glad you guys have taken time to watch the build of the Model A, because I've enjoyed sharing it with you. It's been a couple nights to get to this point, and I love it. I'm kind of happy the way this varnish is changing this color. It took that whiteness out of the pine. It's kind of making it look a little older, which I'm happy for. I really didn't like the brightness of the wood. This tones it down a little. And it's a simple finish, the shellac. People are like, oh, you're shellacking, that's such a simple finish. You know what? Just because it's simple doesn't mean it's not good. You don't have to get into all the exotic coatings. On certain things you might want to, but on this, it dries quick, it looks nice, gets the job done. Once again, it's not good to put one big heavy coat. Take the time, put a couple coats on it, see how it looks. All right, so I have a couple little holders. I stick the rods in the axles holder, and I have a little thing I set here. Keeps the parts and pieces elevated, and now you can continue brushing on. All right, that's done. Now I have my wheel holder. Yeah, if you saw the previous video of the truck, it's the same holder I use there. I've tried to keep all my little templates and jigs, so I don't have to make anything again. Just keep recycling them and put them on a shelf. You'll eventually use them again. Got to make sure you get inside that crack of the wheel. It's a very quick process, just shellac. It's one of those items you really can't screw it up. If you do too much, put too much on, so you sand it off. Hit it with a piece of sandpaper and give it another coat. Alrighty. So that's the first coat. All right, so I'm going to try and give it another coat. It's all dry, waited a few hours. Everything looks nice, pretty level. So let's get going. So it looks like this might be our last coat. Everything covered nice on the first coat, nice and level. And I just want to say, hey, thank you for watching PM Woodworking and spending some time with me. I hope you guys have enjoyed the show and that you've learned some things, and hopefully you attempt to build the Model A, or maybe it's an inspiration to just build something else to get going, and hopefully it's motivated you. Don't forget to like and subscribe to PM Woodworking. I'd love if you left a comment so I know you're there. I appreciate you guys. All right, so that will complete the body of the truck for tonight. Let's get the wheels done. All right, so that's it till tomorrow when we put the wheels on. Okay, guys, well, the build is complete. Everything's finished, nice and smooth. Like I promised, we'll put the wheels on and let her roll. I really appreciate you guys spending the time with me with this build. I hope you like and subscribe to my channel, PM Woodworking, and you share it with some people. I really appreciate it. Let me get the wheels on. So there we have it. There is the car. It's the Model A Wood Edition. I think it came out really nice with the extended bumpers, the extended engine compartment, and the exposed axles. Now I got a surprise for you guys. There was that one. At the same time, I did do another build with the same car, except with this one, I kind of made it for a different wheel. I made it with some heavy wheels on the back, trying to make it look like a little bit of a race car, and I went with some smaller wheels in the front. So there's that build. It's got that little lean down, same car, different look. There you have it. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe. I do appreciate you guys. Thank you so much.